The village of Balvinja may not look like much, but in Bosnia's recent war-scarred history, it is unique. As the region's different ethnic groups turned on each other in the early 1990s, the villagers here refused to cede to the violence and protected each other. SEFKO CAUSEVIC used to serve as mayor of the Bosnian Muslim part of the village. He remembers well the hardship of the conflict. In many ways, he's reminded of it today.
Here in Bosnia, we feel empathy for people from Syria and the Middle East. We know what it is to be a refugee. We know what war is like. We know about terror, about suffering.
Early on in the war, Balvinja came under control of the Serbian forces. With violence against civilians commonplace, the village's Muslim population feared the worst. But Balvinja's Serbian Orthodox residents stood up for their Muslim neighbours, to the surprise of the Bosnian Serb commander, General Talic, himself now accused of war crimes.
When Talic saw that we often gathered together, that we talked and communicated freely, he said, "Don't touch them if they don't bother each other. Then they're neither real Serbs nor real Bosniaks."
Balvinja's elders have seen conflicts come and go in the past century. DUSAN is an Orthodox Serb. Born in 1932, even today he cuts his own wood that his Muslim neighbours helped him to collect to last the winter. Protecting the village's Muslim community was repaying a debt from the Second World War. 7 decades ago, the Bosniak Muslims stopped Croatian forces from massacring the Orthodox Serbs here. In the 1990s, the roles were reversed.
It should figure in the history books. We're like brothers. As soon as the war broke out, they came to us and we protected them. Nobody could touch them, and they did the same for us. We get on well together. No one was killed here.
The truce couldn't last forever. Balvinja was in territory held by Bosnian Serbs. In September 1995, faced with an offensive by Croat forces, Balvinja's residents were forced to flee. Even now, only a quarter have returned. The village mosque survived that onslaught and the Serbian occupation, a rarity in the Balkans' ethnic cleansing.
This is the mosque, the only one in the Serbian Republic that wasn't destroyed, but it was badly damaged. My neighbour, a Serb, helped me repair the floor in the wall. Some people tried to provoke him, saying he would convert to Islam. I told him that it was nothing. If they were to build a church, I would help out if I could. I would be proud to.
Muslim and Orthodox communities cooperating then to rebuild the mosque. A new debt repaid in kind once more as the villagers clubbed together to build an Orthodox church.
We Bosniak Muslims wanted them to have a church. Every believer should have a place to pray. We all agreed to build it. Just like when we worked on the mosque, the Serbs who had money helped. The Bosniaks who had money helped out. Even those without helped.
The village lost 8 sons fighting in the war, 4 Serbs and 4 Bosnian Muslims. And while any bitterness was overcome here by the sense of community, the tragedy of the Balkans War is that Balvinja is the exception. The war left 100,000 dead, Bosnian Muslim civilians making up a third of that total. The most notorious massacre in the war was Srebrenica, where 8,000 Muslim men and boys were murdered by Serbian forces. But that single iconic tragedy in many ways obscures the violence that was sowing hatred across the land. Some, like those in Balvinja, were lucky, but the ethnic cleansing reached into many families. Because they lived in a village just a few kilometers away, SALIHA's parents were murdered. She knew the killers.
There was a massacre where I come from. The local Serbs and the army, they rounded everyone up one night and killed them. There are 2 mass graves. A young man who went to school with my brother, they went to high school together. He took my father to the mass grave, and he killed him.
The scars run deep across the Balkans. 20 years after the turmoil that ripped the country apart, SEFKO knows he and his village were fortunate. For the next generation, many of the divisions of 2 decades ago remain the same. Balvinia today lies inside the Serbian entity that makes up half of Bosnia. The Dayton Peace Accords that ended the war also divided up the country into distinct geographic zones. It also means different ethnic groups rarely mix. That peace deal then partially fulfilling the legacy of the butchers who wanted to carve up the region along ethnic lines.